On the 26th of July 2023, I set out on a journey to beat a Hardcore Nuzlocke of Pokémon Blaze Black 2. This is the video of how I overcame that challenge. If you haven't seen my first video on Blaze Black 2, you should probably go watch that first to witness me failing horribly at this challenge. If you haven't watched that though, a quick recap. Blaze Black 2 is an ultra hard ROM hack of Pokémon Black 2 that I'll be attempting to beat with a Hardcore Nuzlocke rule set. Under these rules, if a Pokémon faints, it's considered dead and must be released. I'll also only be catching the first encounter per area. The rest of the rules are on screen now and can be seen in the description. With all of that out the way, let's jump right in and see how I finally beat a Hardcore Nuzlocke of Pokémon Blaze Black 2. So let's start this once again from the top. Firstly, we've got to pick our starter, and once again, I'm letting my trainer ID decide. And 2 means we're once again getting Baby Dragon, the Snivy. Snivy is pretty strong, and the AI doesn't seem to understand how Contrary works, so Baby Dragon is definitely not a bad option. Next, we head to Route 19 for our first encounter of the run, and this time around, we get a Kricketot. Now, Kricketot is just bad, but Spikebot does have 2 advantages. 1, she evolves at level 10, meaning I already have a fully evolved Pokemon before the first gym. Secondly, she has the ability Technician, which is an excellent ability that boosts low-powered moves. This means, at least for the very early game, Spikebot should be somewhat useful. Once we make it to Tholossy Town, we're able to pick up our Elemental Monkey, and because we got Snivy, we're able to pick up Rogue Godol, the Pampor. I often find Pampor to be the strongest of the Elemental Monkeys in the base game, so I'm excited to see what Rogue Godol can do. Next, we head on to Route 20, where we find a Swaddle. Now, Wormdrake is probably fine, even if I'm not thrilled about having another Pokemon that's weak to fire. Heading onto Tholossy Ranch, we pick up our 5th encounter, which turns out to be an Azurill. This time, Rue has huge power, meaning she should be really useful once she evolves. Lastly, something I didn't work out until around attempt 4 last video, I can take an egg from the breeder on Tholossy Ranch and hatch it in the Aspira Gate. Aspira Gate actually counts as a separate encounter area to Route 20, meaning I can add whatever this egg hatches into to my team. I get really lucky this time around and find a Tyrogue I name Gmo. Having a fighting type before the first gym is really useful, so Gmo is a welcome addition to the team. We've then got a scary Team Plasma fight to deal with, who we manage to push through without losing anyone, just barely. Now we're ready for the first gym fight against Charon, and I actually decide to take a risk and fight the optional trainer, Roxanne, who is just chilling in the trainer school. I don't have time in this video to show this fight, but it's very close, and we very nearly lose, but we pull through with no losses, meaning we're given 2 berry juices before the first gym. This is a slightly stronger Oran Berry, which should be really helpful against Charon. Speaking of which, it's time for our first gym fight of the run, so let's see how this goes. I start with Baby Dragon and Charon starts with Porygon. I immediately start the fight by landing a Leech Seed, and then Porygon lowers its own attack with Work Up because it's copied Baby Dragon's ability Contrary. A strong Leaf Tornado then brings the Porygon to just above 50%, while Porygon goes for another Work Up. What an idiot. One more Leaf Tornado and a Twister are then enough for the KO, as Porygon lands a weak Swift that is mostly healed by Leech Seed. Second is Lillipup, so I go through a Leaf Tornado that does good damage, and then Lillipup retaliates with the Retaliate that does a huge amount and very nearly KOs Baby Dragon. Luckily, Baby Dragon survives, so I decide to switch out into Spikebot. Spikebot then takes a second Retaliate that doesn't do too much before KOing with a Bug Buzz. Third is Munchlax, so I decide to stay in and get off a second Bug Buzz that does low damage before taking a strong Rock Tomb. Luckily, a Berry Juice heals a lot of the damage back. I then decide to switch into Gumo, who tanks a Rock Tomb on the switch. Gumo is then able to get off some chip with a Fake Out before getting off good damage with a Mach Punch on the following turn. Of course, then Munchlax hits back with a Tackle that crits and KOs my Paw Punching baby. Rest in peace, I'm sorry to see you go, you never reached your full potential. With Gumo down, I decide to send in Rogue Godol, who is able to KO the Munchlax with 2 brines while only taking a single tackle. Fourth is Dealing, so I switch into Spike Bot on a workup. A single Bug Buzz is then enough for another KO. 5th is Duo, so I switch into Roo on a Peck that doesn't do much. Roo then has to take a strong quick attack before putting the two-headed bird to sleep. Roo is then able to get off a charm while the bird naps, and then I switch into Rogue Doll. Of course, as I switch, the Doduo wakes up and lands a quick attack that thankfully doesn't do much thanks to the charms. Rogue Doll is then able to land a brine, while Duo goes through a workup. The stupid two-headed bird then goes for a quick attack, which is fine because it's still on -1 attack, unless Charon gets a second crit. Cheating. At least Rogue Doll is able to get the KO with a second brine. Last, the Charon is Ambipom, so I switch into Wormdrake. As I switch, Wormdrake takes a fake out. Before he's able to land an Electro Web, he then has to take a strong double hit. I decide it's worth trying to put Boots the Monkey to sleep with Roo, so I switch her in on a workup. Ambipom then goes through a second workup, so I go through a charm to hopefully guarantee that Ambipom keeps working up. Ambipom is then able to get off 2 workups, but luckily Roo is then able to land a Sing. With Ambipom asleep, and then 3 to switch into Spikebot. Ambipom just naps as Spikebot is able to get the KO with 2 Bug Buzzes. That's the first gym down, and we only lost Gumo due to some bad luck. First gym badge acquired. With the first gym down, we're then able to head over to Verbank City to get our next round of encounters. Inside Verbank Complex, I'm planning to look in the Shaking Dark Grass, as this gives me the highest chance possible to get a double random encounter. A double random encounter gives me a higher chance for a Steel type, which I'm really hoping for here. Unfortunately, before I can even get to the Dark Grass though, I accidentally run into a normal patch of Shaking Grass, and to my amazement, I run into a Beldum. Beldum, on top of being a Steel type, is one of the best Pokemon in the game, so Monarchy is an S tier find. I then go and grab my Kanto starter, and I already have 2 Grass types, so I decide Red Eyes the Charmander is probably the most useful out of the 3. I then decide to take a risk and battle the second Hoenn gym leader, Brawly. I manage to get through this fight, but I do lose Spikebot the Kricketube. Not a huge loss, as Brawly gives me an egg as a reward. This egg contains a Meditite that has huge power, so losing Spikebot is a really good trade for Skullmark. I now notice something strange. Verbank Complex has an outside and an inside area, and I often count them as the same encounter area. This is because on the Pokemon summary screen in the base game, both areas say Court in Verbank Complex. However, in Blaze Black 2, I notice when I'm looking at Monarchy, the captured location reads somewhere far away. I assume this is done so I can get a Pokemon inside and outside of Verbank Complex, or it's a bug. Either way, this means I can grab another encounter just outside Verbank Complex, and I find a Nidoran. Having a poison type is excellent for the upcoming gym, so Amazon is a fantastic final encounter before Roxy. With all the encounters I can get collected then, we're ready to face Roxy, and I've got a decent team to deal with her poison types, so fingers crossed this goes well. Roxy starts with Trubbish, and I start with Amazon. Trubbish outspeeds and sets up toxic spikes, and then Amazon is able to land a horn attack. Trubbish then sets up a second layer of toxic spikes before going down to a second horn attack that crits. Second is Coughing, so I switch into Monarchy on a Psybeam that does next to nothing. I then switch back into Amazon to remove the toxic spikes as Coughing lands a hard lava plume. I decide to take a risk and get off a horn attack with Amazon that does minimal damage. Coughing hits back with a really hard Psybeam. With Amazon so low, I decide to switch into Monarchy on a Psybeam and then Rogue Doll on a lava plume. Rogue Doll is then able to get off a really strong Scold, but Coughing is able to hit back with another Venoshock that does stupid damage. With Rogue Doll so low, I decide to switch into Monarchy on another Venoshock and then Skullmark on a lava plume. Skullmark is then able to KO the annoying Gas Ball with a Fake Out plus Confusion. Third is Ghastly, and unfortunately I don't have a choice here but to make a sacrifice. I'm really stuck on who's the least useful here, as all of my Pokemon are super strong. Unfortunately, I decide I don't have a choice here but to let Rogue Doll go down, so I salute as my water monkey comes in and goes down to a Venoshock. Rest in peace, Rogue Doll. If I saw another way out, I would have taken it. I'm then able to send in Red Eyes, who is able to take out the Ghastly with a Flame Burst and Dragon Breath as Ghastly goes through a Torment. Fourth is Ivysaur, so I immediately go through a Dragon Breath as Ivysaur gets off a Leech Seed. I then switch into Monarchy as Ivysaur goes for a Protect. I then have a really long and drawn out fight with Ivysaur, switching between Red Eyes and Monarchy every time it lands a Leech Seed. The Ivysaur does eventually go down to a combination of Flame Burst from Red Eyes and Confusions from Monarchy. Fifth is Whirlipede, so I switch into Red Eyes as Whirlipede tries to go for a Protect. Red Eyes then has to take a strong Steamroller, but a single crit Flame Burst is then enough for the KO. Last, the Roxy is Quillfish. I decide to stay in with Red Eyes as he's no longer weak to water attacks thanks to his dragon typing. It's still a close call though, as Quillfish very nearly KOs with an Aqua Jet, but luckily Red Eyes survives and is able to land a Breaking Swipe, lowering Quillfish's attack. I then switch into Monarchy on a weak Aqua Jet before getting the KO with 2 Confusions. That's the second gym taken down. It's a shame we had to let our monkey go down there, but it was unfortunately the only safe way I could get Red Eyes in to take down the Ghastly. Second gym badge acquired. I'd also like to take a second to remind you that if you've been enjoying this video so far, remember to leave a like and subscribe for more content in the future. Also, don't forget to follow me on Twitter for updates and cute dog pictures. We're then ready to head off to Castelia City for our next set of encounters. Firstly, we're able to pick up our Johto starter, and as always, I pick Cyndaquil just because giving myself every advantage against Berg seems like a good idea, so Silverfang joins the party. I then battle an annoying amount of trainers to receive an egg we can hatch in the gate bridge that hatches into a Mime Jr. Mime Jr. is actually a really strong supportive Pokemon, so Air Fortress is an excellent addition to the team. We're then able to head into Castelia Sewers to find our next encounter, and of course, I'm hoping for Zubat again, and I get insanely lucky and recatch Darkseid. Darkseid should be able to pretty handily defeat Berg and his bug types. I then get even more insanely lucky because inside Relic Passage, I once again find a Nincada I name Cyber Falcon. Cyber Falcon, of course, is a decently strong encounter in its own right, but it's really the Shedinja that is the real prize. Jinzo is one of the most broken Pokemon in the game, so I'm really excited to get to use him again. One more encounter as I head on to Route 4 to find ourselves a Darumaka. Mystic Tomato is an absolute beast of the Pokemon, one of my favourites from Gen 5, so he's a great way to round out our encounters before Berg. I then take the time to grab a load of useful items from Castelia City, such as a Moonstone to evolve Amazon, an Eviolite, the TM Pluck, and a Charcoal to increase my fire damage from Red Eyes. With everything set up, I'm then ready to take on our third gym fight of the run, and that happens to be a double battle, so Berg starts with Mothim and Masquerain, while I start with Red Eyes and Fortress. This fight is honestly pretty straightforward. Air Fortress is able to fake out the Masquerain, allowing Red Eyes to KO the Mothim. A Follow Me then allows Red Eyes to stay in and get off the strong Flame Burst into Vespiquen, and Air Fortress is brought down to 1 HP from an Air Slash. Bit too close there. Luckily, I'm now in a good position to switch in Monarchy and Darkseid. With Darkseid out, I'm able to KO the Vespiquen with a Pluck, while Masquerain goes for a Struggle Bug. I'm then able to KO the Leathani that comes out with a Bullet Punch and Pluck, while Masquerain continues to do nothing as it goes through a Soak. A Pluck into the Heracross is then enough through a one-shot as Masquerain goes for another Struggle Bug. This thing really isn't very threatening, is it? Darkseid is then able to KO the stupid Masquerain with a single Pluck, and then the Excavalier goes down to 2 Plucks and a single Flame Burst from Red Eyes. Crobat for MVP, let me completely sweep and get through that battle deathless. With the third gym down, we're now on to the mid-game. So after defeating our third gym leader, we can go catch a number of useful encounters. Firstly, in the Desert Resort, we can find a Maractus we name Dark Gremlin. Maractus has received a pretty decent buff and has the ability Water Absorb, so she should be pretty useful. Second, in Relic Castle, we find an Elgim we name Dragon Piper. I hate Elgims, they're usually one of the worst Pokemon in this generation, but Dragon Piper has one advantage in that it can learn the really useful move, Trick Room. Next, on Route 16, we find a Gothitelle, who is another Pokemon I really can't stand. Interestingly, it's been given a Dark typing in this hack, so maybe Fiend will be useful. I'm unsure on that, but if she's not, I'm setting her on fire. And lastly, on Route 5, I find a Sololsis I name Boar Soldier. Now Sololsis is probably a really useful support Pokemon, but I'm almost tempted not to use it because I can't pronounce its final evolution to save my life. Relicushlis? You can stay in the box. We can then go and grab one more encounter before the next gym, and we get to pick between the Hoenn starters. Obviously, Pumpkin the Mudkip is a must bring for the next gym, so she'll be joining us on our adventures. With that out the way, we're ready for our triple battle with Eliza, and being a triple battle, this fight goes pretty quick, so I hope you're paying attention. Eliza starts with Emolga, Lantern and Electivire, and I start with Pumpkin, Air Fortress and Amazon. I immediately go through a Fake Out into the Lantern, while Emolga and Electivire go through weak discharges but only hit Air Fortress. I then get off a layer of Toxic Spikes with Amazon as Pumpkin lands a Yawn into the Lantern. Emolga and Electivire then once again go for weak discharges into Air Fortress, but luckily a berry keeps her healthy, allowing her to set up a light screen. Amazon is then able to get off the second layer of Toxic Spikes as Pumpkin lands a Yawn into the Electivire. Lantern starts setting up with Tail Glow, which would be super scary, but luckily it then falls asleep. On the next turn, I switch Air Fortress out for Jinzo, meaning Emolga and Electivire's electric attacks do nothing. A Poison Tail then does a huge amount into the Emolga, who is only able to survive thanks to a Focus Sash. Pumpkin then gets off a Bulldoze that does good damage into Electivire and KOs the Lantern thanks to a crit. Next, the Spiky Zebra comes out, so I immediately switch Jinzo out for Red Eyes, who takes a Flame Burst and an Air Slash. Emolga then goes down to a second Poison Tail, bringing out Stunkfish. I then switch Red Eyes out for Jinzo again, meaning I'm able to get off two Bulldozes with Pumpkin and Amazon, KOing both Zebstrika and Electivire without taking any damage at all. All that's left for Eliza at this point is Raichu and Stunkfish, so I switch Pumpkin out into Mystic Tomato to keep her safe from a Grass Knot from Raichu. A Shadow Sneak then breaks Raichu's air balloon as a weak Grass Knot goes into Mystic Tomato. One final Bulldoze from Amazon is then enough for a double KO, securing us our fourth gym fight and our second gym battle with no deaths. I'm clearly a pro at this now. I'm sure we can get through the rest of this game with no more deaths. Fourth gym badge acquired. So carrying on, before we can get any more encounters, we had an incredibly close triple battle with Charles, and unfortunately Darksage is slain. Losing Darksage sucks, but I've gotten this far with only 4 deaths, so I can deal with the loss. We then get a chance to get some new encounters before we have to deal with Clay and his run-ending team. Firstly, we once again catch a Ducklet we name Gorlag. Gorlag is a pretty fast special attacking water type that is immune to Earthquake, so he'd be perfect for the next gym. Next, in Clay's tunnel, we find a Sandslash we name Luster. Sandslash is often underwhelming, but Luster does have Sand Rush, which increases his speed in Sandstorm, so he should find some sort of niche in the next gym. I then get really lucky on Route 6 and re-find a Deerling with Sapsipper. Finding Dark Zebra should mean I have a much easier time with the next gym. We then get one last encounter before the next gym, and it's one of the Sinnoh starters. This time, instead of Turtwig, I pick Chimchar, the Snake Hair, as a strong firefighting type should be invaluable. It's then time for Clay, whose team is stacked. Clay has an Excadrill, Garchomp, Torterra, and Mamoswine, who are all super scary, and Clay's Nidoking and Seismitoad can also be a nightmare if you're not careful. Luckily, I've got a lot of counters for these Pokemon, so I'm hoping with some clever switching I should be able to push through this. So Clay starts with Seismitoad and I start with Pumpkin. With Pumpkin out, I bait a 4x super effective Power Whip, but thankfully Dark Zebra has Sap Sipper, so I can switch him into 3 and get a 3 attack boost, and then one-shot the overgrown Toad with a Horn Leech. Second is Nidoking, and I have to do a lot of switching to get Luster in safely here. So firstly, I switch into Monarchy on a Sludge Wave, and then Gorlag on an Earthquake. I can then switch Luster in on a Thunderbolt, who then KOs Nidoking with a single Drill Run. Third is Torterra, and I decide it's best to let Luster go down to a Wood Hammer. So I stay in and get off some weak damage with a Pin Missile, and scarily, Torterra goes for a Shell Smash. Well, that's horrifying, but I don't really have much of the choice here but to stay in and go through another Pin Missile. Torterra outspeeds, but luckily it gets greedy and goes for another Shell Smash. Another Shell Smash means that Torterra's defenses are dropped, and a crit from Pin Missile is enough for the KO. That crit was stupidly lucky because there was a chance Torterra would have just swept my entire team. Thank you, Luster. With Torterra down, fourth is Mamoswine. I decide I should risk Luster going down here as I wasn't expecting him to survive as long as he has, and there's a chance he can survive an attack as he's actually pretty bulky. So I decide to stay in and get off decent damage with a Drill Run before being hit by an Icicle Crash that does huge damage. Somehow though, Luster survives on 12 HP. What a legend. At this point, I can pretty much guarantee Mamoswine will go through an Ice Shard, so I switch into Monarchy, who eats the hit. Now I decide it's worth taking a risk with Monarchy here because he will survive a non-crit and Meteor Mash will 100% KO the Ice Mammoth. So I stay in and get lucky for the second time this battle as Quick Claw activates, meaning Monarchy is able to outspeed and KO with a Meteor Mash without taking any damage. Again, I'm fairly sure Monarchy could take a hit there, but it's still nice to be able to get that KO without taking a hit. Fifth for Clay is the always scary Garchomp, so I switch into Gorlag on an Earthquake. I then switch into Roo on a Dragon Claw. Roo is outsped on the following turn and has to take a strong Earthquake, but she's able to take the hit and then hit back with a strong Covert that steals Garchomp's Yachi Berry. I predict Garchomp will probably go through an extreme speed here, so I switch into Monarchy on a resisted hit. I then switch back into Gorlag on an Earthquake. Gorlag then has to take a really scary Dragon Claw, but he survives, meaning he's able to land an Icy Wind for the KO. Now, last for Clay is his ace Excadrill, and my team's looking a bit beat up at this point. I decide my best bet is Pumpkin, who should be able to come in on little damage if Clay goes the Rock Slide. Annoyingly though, Clay instead goes for an X-Scissor that does massive damage. On the next turn, I then go for a Muddy Water that just misses the KO, and Excadrill gets off another scary X-Scissor. Luckily, Excadrill is low enough where a priority Aqua Jet from Roo will KO, but I need to get her in safely. That means someone is going to have to go down here, and I decide on Pumpkin, which in hindsight is a mistake. However, I make my choice and stay in, meaning I have to watch as Pumpkin is taken down by an Earthquake. Rest in peace, buddy, you gave us the win. With Pumpkin down, I'm able to send in Roo, who KOs the overgrown mole with an Aqua Jet. Got some decent luck in that fight, but I'm not going to complain. That's the 5th gym down, meaning we've won our 5th gym badge. Moving on from Clay then, after a quick rival battle outside Chargestone Cave, it's then time for some more encounters. Firstly, in Mistralton Cave, we find a Larvitar we name Grand Tiki. While not as stupidly broken as Salamence or the like, Tiki will still be an incredibly strong rock type that should be very useful against the upcoming gym. Second, in Chargestone Cave, we find a Boldore who is another strong rock type. I'll take all the rock types I can get because I don't actually have that many counters for the next gym, so welcome aboard, Axe Rider. Then heading up past Mistralton City onto Route 4, we find a Snorunt we name Malistoll. Now I'm unsure if I should evolve Snorunt into a Throslass or a Gallade, but either way, she's another excellent encounter to add to my party. And we've only got one thing to do before Skylar: get some revenge on this. My last video ended here because I didn't prepare enough for this fight, but this time around I'm ready to kick some ass. So I start with Red Eyes while Colress starts with the intimidating MT. MT starts the fight by setting up a Stealth Rocks, and then Red Eyes is immediately able to do good damage into MT with the Flame Burst. Red card then activates, forcing out Gorlag. Now MT can't do much damage to Gorlag, so I stay in and get off a Tailwind as Colress switches into MT2. I now know that MT2 will go through a Wild Charge here, so I switch into Luster. With Luster out and Tailwind up, I can then outspeed and go through a Rapid Spin, removing the Stealth Rocks and popping MT2's Air Balloon. Scarily, this allows MT2 to get off the Shift Gear. This would make MT2 really scary, but luckily Luster's Quick Claw activates, allowing him to KO the Mechagodzilla with a single drill run. Unsure if Quick Claw made a difference there, as Tailwind was still up, but can't complain. Next is F00, so I switch into Red Eyes on a Needle Arm. F00 is then able to get off a Thunder Wave, meaning Red Eyes gets paralyzed. Red Eyes then has to take an extreme speed before being paralyzed again. God, Colress is such a cheater. With Red Eyes so low, I decide to switch into Monarchy, who takes another extreme speed on the switch. Colress then goes through a U-turn into MT, meaning an Earthquake KOs MT. Next is the UFO, and I'm unsure if it's going to go through a Volt switch here. I decide it might, so I stay in, and for some strange reason, the UFO goes to Psychic. That's annoying, but I decide to stay in and try and go through another Earthquake, but the UFO just goes through another weak Psychic. I don't really understand why it keeps doing that, but as Colress keeps going for Psychics, I decide to switch into Grand Tiki on another Psychic. This AI is strange sometimes. Now, I'm pretty sure the AI will go through a Volt switch, and this time I'm correct, meaning an Earthquake from Tiki goes into the F00 robot, getting another KO. Then the UFO comes out, meaning a single crit Rock Slide from Grand Tiki is enough to avenge Run 9. Funny how much easier optional fights are when you actually prepare for them. With that out the way then, it's time for our fight with Skylar, and I've heard this is one of the trickiest fights in the game, as it's a really scary triple battle. Let's see if I'm up to the task. As Skylar starts with Jumpluff, Gliscor, and Pidgeot, I start with Malistol, who has evolved into Throslass, Air Fortress, and Red Eyes. I immediately start the fight by going through a Fake Out into Jumpluff to stop it getting off any sleep powders before KOing with the Flame Burst from Red Eyes. Malistol is then able to KO the Gliscor with a single Frost Breath. Air Fortress and Malistol then both have to take a nasty Heat Wave from Pidgeot, but luckily they both survive, even if my Dole does get burned. Skylar then sends out her Aerodactyl and Togekiss. I decide I need to get Malistol out, so I switch her for Axe Rider. I then switch Red Eyes out for Dragon Piper, as I expect a Rock-type move from Aerodactyl. Unfortunately, my prediction is wrong, and Aerodactyl goes for a Brave Bird into Air Fortress, KOing my creepy looking Mime. Rest in peace, buddy. I would have loved to have taken you further, but it just wasn't meant to be. A Heat Wave and Hurricane then do minimal damage into Axe Rider, but he does get confused, which could be annoying. With Air Fortress down, I decide to send in Red Eyes, who I'm hoping will bait a Rock move from Aerodactyl. Hoping my prediction is correct this time, I switch Red Eyes out for Air Tiki as Togekiss goes for a Protect. I'm then correct in my prediction as a Head Smash connects into Grand Tiki, doing massive damage. Pidgeot then gets off a gem boosted Hyper Voice that luckily doesn't do a huge amount. Axe Rider then hits himself in confusion for a second time. Really, Axe Rider? This has all been part of my plan, however, as I now have my two Rock types out as Dragon Piper sets up a Trick Room. With Trick Room up, as long as I don't get unlucky with misses or more confusion hits, I should be able to sweep. So Dragon Piper actually goes Thirst on the following turn and hits a strong crit Psybeam into Aerodactyl. Axe Rider then finally breaks through his confusion and lands a Rock Slide onto Togekiss and Pidgeot, doing massive damage into both. Grand Tiki is then able to get a triple KO with a Rock Slide. What an absolute beast. That just leaves Swanana for Skylar, who is actually threatening for my low health team members. I really have to hope Grand Tiki doesn't miss here, so I go through a Stone Edge to guarantee the KO. Of course, Axe Grinder hits himself in confusion for a third time before Dragon Piper lands a weak Psybeam. Can Grand Tiki get another KO, and Stone Edge connects, winning us our 6th gym badge. That was a really close fight, but honestly, for how scared I was going into that, it went pretty smoothly, all things considered. We're now facing down the end game, so it's only going to get tougher from here. 6th gym badge acquired. There's then a very large gap between Skylar and the next gym, and unfortunately, inside Reversal Mountain, I lose Cyber Falcon, the Ninjask, Skullmark, the Medicham, and Wormdrake, the Leathani. Now losing these Pokemon sucks, but unfortunately there was just one too many trainers inside Reversal Mountain I was not prepared for, and I got punished hard. Luckily, I'm then able to get a huge amount of encounters before the next gym. Obviously, the less notable ones I won't mention, but there are a fair few that matter. Firstly, just outside Reversal Mountain, I find a Scorpii who I named Dark Magician. Scorpii in the base game is an absolutely broken Pokemon with insane coverage, extremely high speed, and really high attack, so Dark Magician is going to become a staple, I'm sure. Then fishing in Undilla Town, we're able to fish up another excellent encounter, a Starmie I named Karibo. Karibo is a fantastic special sweeper that will help us get through a lot of tougher fights later on. Slightly to the right in Undella Bay, I'm able to find a Horsey. I do have a lot of dragon types already, but I have to be an idiot to turn my nose up at a Kingdra encounter, so welcome to the club, Strike Ninja. Heading south on Route 14, I'm able to find an Absol I named Maha. Now Absols are often really underwhelming, but I'm sure this hack has given Maha some much needed buffs. Next, in the Abundant Shrine, I'm able to find and catch a Cottony. Now Cottony has Prankster, meaning Mystic Man can get off priority sleep powders. I can't even begin to express just how useful priority sleep powders are, especially when they're combined with a wide lens to boost the accuracy. So just know, Mystic Man is probably one of the most important encounters in this entire run. Now, before I get any more encounters, I do have a really scary battle with Alda's kid, Bengan, and his team is stacked to all hell. Just look at this mess. Luckily, thanks to Karibo, I'm able to get through this fight with little issues, but it does cost us Luster, the Sand Slash, so rest in peace buddy. I'm then ready for Drayden and his dragon types, and for once I'm pretty confident. I now have Mystic Man with wide lens, meaning I should be able to put Drayden's team to sleep and then KO before they're able to do much of anything. So let's start this fight. Drayden starts with Charizard and a 3-King Latios, while I start with Mystic Man and Malistol. Mystic Man immediately puts Charizard to sleep with a wide lens boosted sleep powder, and then takes a weak Thunderbolt from Latias. Malistol then sets up the Hail. Now for my plan to work, I need Charizard to stay asleep, and I pretty much have this won. So I set up a Tailwind with Mystic Man as Latias goes for a weak Dragon Pulse into Malistol. Malistol then gets off a strong Blizzard that brings both dragons to 50% HP. I then pray Charizard stays asleep, and the Fire Dragon does. That means this fight is pretty much over, as Helping Hand boosted Blizzard is able to finish off Latias and Charizard, one-shot both Salamence and Haxorus, and then a Blizzard fails to KO Flygon and Sceptile, but a Dazzling Gleam from Mystic Man is able to get the double KO, winning us the match. Easy. Did have to get lucky there with an 85% chance Sleep Powder, and then hope Charizard didn't wake up on that second turn, but it all worked out, even if I did have a plan B in place. No issues at all during that fight. That's our 7th gym badge acquired. We're then off to Haluma City, and I'm excited because my documents tell me I can get the Protect TM here. Just gotta find it. Not here, you don't have it, this lady makes me walk her Pokemon, but still doesn't give me the TM. I'm at a little bit of a loss to wear it, oh no. So yes, it turns out to get one of the best moves in the game for double battles and triple battles, you have to fight Tate and Liza in a double battle, and their team is seriously stacked. I decide it's worth the risk though, because Protect is just that valuable. I don't have time in this video to show the full battle, but I will do a quick recap. Thanks to some sleep luck, I'm able to put both of Tate and Liza's Pokemon to sleep and then set up Tailwind. Setting up Tailwind means I'm able to sweep a good amount of this scary double battle, but it does cost me Rue and Fiend. Rest in peace guys. Losing two strong Pokemon for Protect is 100% worth it though. I'm then able to get some more encounters before the next gym. We find 2 really fast and strong physical attackers. On Route 22, I find a Miningtho I name Sangang, and in Giant Chasm, I find a Sneasel I name Basic Insect. Both of these Pokemon are excellent physical sweepers, so they make fantastic additions to my roster. We're then ready for the final gym, and this one's another double battle, but this time with Permanent Rain. Fortunately, with Jinzo, that now has Protect, an Ally Switch, and Dragon Piper to set up Trick Room, I'm going into this pretty confident. So Marlon starts with Poliwrath and Ludicolo, and I start with Jinzo and Dragon Piper. I immediately start with an Ally Switch, so both of Marlon's attacks go into Jinzo and don't do anything, while Piper starts with the Trick Room. I decide to switch Piper out for Dark Gremlin, as Jinzo gets off a strong Bug Bite into Ludicolo. A Hydro Pump from Ludicolo then goes into Dark Gremlin, and thanks to her ability Water Absorb, it does nothing. Poliwrath then lands a Lovely Kiss into Jinzo that would be an issue, but luckily I equipped him with a Chesto Berry before the fight started. On the following turn, I'm able to get a double KO as Bug Bite brings down Ludicolo and a Needle Arm brings down Poliwrath. Next for Marlon is Kingdra and Pelipper, and I'm pretty sure Jinzo baits a Hurricane from both Pokemon here, so I go through a Protect while switching Dragon Piper back out. On the switch, my prediction is correct, meaning I can avoid both attacks thanks to Protect. On the next turn, Jinzo's still baiting 2 Hurricanes here, so I go through an Ally Switch as Piper is able to KO the Fat Seagull with a Thunderbolt despite a berry reducing the damage. Piper then has to take a weak Hurricane from Kingdra as Trick Room ends. Now I want to set up Trick Room again here, and I'm mostly safe to do so as Jinzo baits Hurricane again, and I'm pretty sure Kabutops will go through a Rock Slide that shouldn't KO Piper. I'm once again correct with my predictions, meaning Piper is able to survive the Rock Slide and then reset up Trick Room. God Protect and Ally Switch on Jinzo are so broken. With Trick Room set up again, I decide to do a double switch, sending in Monarchy and Dark Gremlin. On the switch, both my Pokemon take a weak Rock Slide from Kabutops, and then Monarchy takes a weak Hurricane. Perfect. On the following turn, I decide to go through a Zen Headbutt into the Kabutops before a Protect from Gremlin baits both Kingdra and Kabutops' attacks. I then switch Dark Gremlin out for Red Eyes as Zen Headbutt KOs the Kabutops. Scarily, Kingdra then goes through a Dragon Pulse, but luckily it goes into Monarchy instead of Red Eyes for some reason. Maybe the AI was trying to predict a switch? Unsure, but it worked out. I then decide to double switch again, Monarchy into Jinzo and Mystic Man into Red Eyes. My predictions are really on point this fight because both attacks go where I want them, meaning I get both my Pokemon in for 3. I then spend a turn putting Kingdra to sleep and ally switching to make sure Starmie's attack does nothing. Now at this point I should start attacking Kingdra as it's the more threatening between the 2 Pokemon, but instead I make a misplay. I decide to double up into Starmie with a Shadow Sneak and Energy Ball, just missing the KO. Mystic Man then has to take a hard Ice Beam. I've now left myself in an awkward spot as I can KO the Starmie easily, but if Kingdra wakes up, I'm in a bit of trouble. I decide that if Kingdra does wake up, it will see the KO on both my Pokemon with Hurricane. Because of this, I decide to make it a 50-50 chance I lose something if Kingdra wakes up by going through a Protect with Mystic Man. So Jinzo goes through a Shadow Sneak and I just pray this works and Kingdra stays asleep. I'm still in a bit of an awkward spot, but I'm so close to winning, so I decide to switch Mystic Man out for Red Eyes, who should be able to one-shot while protecting with Jinzo. As I switch, I get super lucky as Kingdra wakes up but just goes through a weak Flash Cannon. This means I've won as I can ally switch on the next turn, meaning Kingdra's Dragon Pulse does nothing as Red Eyes' Dragon Breath brings Kingdra into the red. A single Shadow Sneak from Jinzo is then enough to end this match and win us our final gym badge. That got a bit crazy there at the end, but we managed to pull through with no deaths thanks to some clever switching and just how broken Jinzo is. With that, we've won our last gym badge and just have some Team Plasma stuff to deal with before we reach the end of this journey. When I say some Team Plasma stuff, I mean a lot of Team Plasma stuff. Firstly, we've got to fight Xylon in 2 double battles that aren't actually that difficult. Then comes what I think will be a really tricky part, Colress and then Ghetsis. But when I'm looking at these teams, I notice something. Colress only has 2 Pokemon that can hit Jinzo, and Ghetsis only fares slightly better, having 3 Pokemon that can hit Jinzo. That means if I can just KO the Pokemon that threaten Jinzo, I will just win. So with Colress, I use Dark Magician to kill his clone, and then Baby Dragon to KO Rotom. That leaves Jinzo completely free and safe to very slowly watch Colress's team burn to death. How's that for bringing out the power of Pokemon you brought? Then it's on to Ghetsis, who is as easy. Firstly, I put a Scary Dragon to sleep with Mystic Man before KOing with a single high jump kick from Sangang. Then the real fight starts, so I KO Kothagrigus with Dark Magician, Machamp with Kuribo, and then Hydreigon with Sangang. Then it's a clean sweep with Jinzo. God, I love this little bug. That's Team Plasma taken down in the simplest way possible. I think Ghetsis might have just had a stroke. Anyway, we're then ready for one final gauntlet before the Elite Four, because of course, this ROM hack has one more trick up its sleeve. On Victory Road, we fight what is basically a mini Weather Elite Four before we get to the main Elite Four. So the way this works is that you have to fight back-to-back battles against the Hail and Sun trainers before then having a chance to change your Pokemon before having to fight the Rain and Sandstorms trainers back-to-back. This gauntlet is absolutely brutal, and there's a long list of casualties by the time me and my Pokemon come out the other side. We lose Dark Zebra, the Sawsbuck, and Sangang, the Miningshow, to the first pair of Hail and Sun trainers. Then, when up against the Water and Ground trainers, I lose Snakehair, the Infernape, Strike Ninja, the Kingdra, and Gorlag, the Swanana. These losses are pretty bad, but what's even worse is then I have to finish off this gauntlet by fighting none other than Lance himself, because what's a mini Elite Four without a surprise Lance battle at the end? So let's jump right into this fight with Lance, who starts with Aerodactyl, while I start with Monarchy. Monarchy is easily able to take down Aerodactyl with 2 bullet punches, as Aerodactyl just misses a head smash. Second is Salamence, so I switch into Kuribo on a flamethrower. Kuribo is then able to easily one-shot with an Ice Beam. Third is Dragonite, so I immediately get off another Ice Beam, which doesn't actually do that much because of the Gachi Berry and Dragonite's multi-scale, which reduces damage while Dragonite is at full health. Dragonite then raises its speed with an agility, meaning on the next turn it's able to outspeed and very nearly KO Kuribo with an Outrage. Thankfully, Kuribo survives on 3 HP and then is able to hit back and secure the KO with a second Ice Beam. Fourth is Gyarados, and luckily Kuribo is able to outspeed and one-shot with a Thunderbolt. Fifth is Haxorus, and I'm unsure if I can one-shot with another Ice Beam here, but Haxorus is holding a red card, meaning that after Kuribo gets off an Ice Beam that just misses the KO, he's forced out for Mystic Man, who takes a hard Iron Tail that very nearly KOs. With Mystic Man nearly down, I decide to switch into Monarchy on another Iron Tail, and then KO with a priority Bullet Punch. Last for Lance is Charizard, who is pretty scary. Luckily, Charizard only has a physical fire move in Fire Lash, despite having a really high special attack. Charizard's mediocre physical attack combined with Monarchy's really high physical defense means he's able to take a single Fire Lash before doing good damage with a Rock Slide. Because I didn't get the KO, however, I now have to switch into Grand Tiki, who takes a Fire Lash on the switch that lowers his defense. Because of the defense drop, I'm actually scared an Iron Tail will KO Grand Tiki here, so I decide to switch into Malistol. I'm unsure if Malistol would have taken the hit any better, but it hardly matters as she's able to avoid the Iron Tail on the switch and then end this fight with an Ice Beam. You Lance, what a gauntlet, but we made it through, and even with heavy losses, that's what matters. We're then able to take down our rival one last time with no issues before arriving at the end and the Elite Four. Thankfully, unlike Renegade Platinum, this Elite Four has set teams, which at the very least means I know what I'm walking into. However, Marshall and Caitlyn are both double battles, and Chantel is a triple battle, so this is nowhere near over. Even with all the losses it took to get to this point, we've still got a lot of Pokemon to build a team with, so let's see who we're bringing. First up is Mystic Man, the Whimsicott, who is an excellent supported Pokemon with priority sleep powders. Second is Monarchy, the Metagross, who is a massive powerhouse and synergizes really well with Mystic Man. Third is Red Eyes, the Charizard, who is a really powerful special attacker and whose Fire Dragon typing combines really well with Metagross and Whimsicott to make a really strong Steel Dragon Fairy core. Fourth is Basic Insect, the Weavile, who as well as being the fastest Pokemon I have, is essential as a Pokemon that can take Dark type hits, as the majority of my team is weak to them. Fifth is Kuribo, the Starmie, who is almost as fast as Weavile and provides excellent coverage. And last but not least, I'm bringing Jinzo. Now, Jinzo isn't as broken as he could be, as a lot of this Elite Four has coverage moves against him, but he's still invaluable as basically a guaranteed bait through a lot of attacks. So that's what team we're bringing. It's been a long old journey to get to this point, so let's see if me and my Pokemon have what it takes to finally complete Blaze Black 2. So first up for this Elite Four is Grimsley, and I am hoping Grimsley should be the easiest member of this Elite Four, as his fight is just a straight up singles battle. So Grimsley starts with Crocodile, and I start with Mystic Man. Mystic Man is immediately able to put the overgrown Croc to sleep with a single sleep powder, and then KO with 2 Moonblasts. Good start. Second is Drapion, and I'm suspicious this might actually be the Zoroark, so I decide to stay in and land another sleep powder. I then go for another Moonblast, which gets the KO, because lo and behold, it was actually the Zoroark. Then the actual Drapion comes out, and this thing is scary. I immediately put this poison monster to sleep with another sleep powder before getting off a single Moonblast that doesn't do too much. I then decide to U-turn into Monarchy as Drapion stays asleep. Before I can then KO with Monarchy, Drapion does finally wake up and land a really hard Night Slash, but luckily it doesn't crit, meaning Monarchy is able to hit back with an Earthquake and get the KO. Fourth for Grimsley is Honchkrow, so I decide to switch into Basic Insect. Of course, on the switch, Honchkrow goes for an Overheat instead of the Stab Night Slash, and then to make matters worse, Basic Insect gets burned, meaning I can't even KO on the following turn. I decide there's a chance Honchkrow might go through another Heat Wave on the following turn, so I switch into Kuribo. Of course, my prediction is wrong again, and Kuribo has to take a stupidly powerful Brave Bird on the switch. Luckily, Kuribo survives though, and is able to outspeed and KO with a Thunderbolt on the following turn. Fifth is Tyranitar, and I'm a bit worried Kuribo won't one-shot here, so I switch into Mystic Man. Of course, I get unlucky again on the switch, as Tyranitar goes for an Ice Punch, which thankfully Mystic Man survives. Is the AI cheating? I swear these predictions are crazy. Thankfully though, Mystic Man is then able to put the Cheetah to sleep and then KO with 2 Moonblasts. Last, the Grimsley is Sharpedo, who can't really touch Mystic Man despite being on super low HP, so I decide to stay in and tank a very scary Crunch before very nearly KOing Sharpedo with a single Moonblast. It's then a case of sending in Monarchy, who takes a Waterfall on the switch before KOing with a single Bullet Punch. First member of the Elite Four down. We had some very close calls during that fight, but thanks to some luck, where we needed it, we pulled through. Second for this Elite Four is Caitlyn, who challenges us to a double battle. I'm hoping that we should be able to get through this fight without too many issues however, as we have some good counters to our Pokemon, and Jinzo should be able to bait out a lot of attacks. So let's start this fight, as Caitlyn starts with Musharna and Slowbro, and I start with Monarchy and Jinzo. Now normally I would have to protect Jinzo here, as both of Caitlyn's Pokemon threaten with super effective moves. However, Monarchy is able to one-shot the floating Dream Cow thing with a super effective Meteor Mash before it can do anything, and then while Jinzo isn't able to KO the Slowbro with a powerful Lunge, Lunge does activate Slowbro's escape button, forcing it to switch out. Caitlyn then sends in her completely terrifying Darmanitan, which has some crazy stats, and her Slowbro again. Didn't we just get rid of this thing? Annoying Slowbros aside, I know there's a very high chance that 2 fire attacks are coming out from Caitlyn here, so I switch Monarchy for Kuribo and Jinzo for Red Eyes. On the Switch, both my Pokemon take a massive amount from the Darmanitan's Heat Wave, as Slowbro's Fire Blast doesn't do much against Red Eyes. I'm then in a bit of an awkward spot, as I'm pretty sure Darmanitan now sees the KO on both Kuribo and Red Eyes. I'm also pretty sure Slowbro sees the KO into Red Eyes. I decide that pretty much means there's a 100% chance of Red Eyes going down here if I don't protect or switch him out, and there's only a 50-50 chance of Kuribo going down, as Darmanitan could target either spot. Because of this, I decide to take a massive risk with Kuribo and go through a Surf while I switch Red Eyes out for Jinzo. So Kuribo outspeeds and gets off a pretty strong Surf into both Slowbro and Darmanitan, and then I hold my breath and pray, and 2 Psychics go into Jinzo. Thank God, that was a crazy lucky prediction, as I'm now able to get the double KO with a second Surf into Darmanitan and then a lunge into Slowbro. That was a bit crazy, but we're not through this just yet, as up next for Caitlyn is Xatu and Gallade. I decide Jinzo is baiting both attacks here again, so I decide to protect, which allows Kuribo to get off the strong Surf that does decent damage into both Xatu and Gallade. I then decide to switch Jinzo out for Basic Insect as Kuribo protects. On the Switch, Basic Insect takes a weak Shadow Sneak from Gallade, and a Giga Drain from Xatu goes into Kuribo's Protect. Kuribo is then more than likely baiting at least the Xatu here, so I switch him out for Mystic Man as I go through a Fake Out into the Gallade. Xatu just goes for another Giga Drain into Mystic Man that does next to nothing. I'm then in a perfect place to get another double KO, as an Icicle Crash KOs the Xatu, and a Moonblast from Mystic Man finishes off the Gallade. Caitlyn's down to our last Pokemon, the always scary Metagross. Now, I'm pretty sure a Steel attack from this beast will KO both Mystic Man and Basic Insect, so I immediately put the Metagross to sleep before landing a strong Night Slash with Basic Insect. I then have to hope and pray for another turn of sleep here, as a priority Bullet Punch will probably KO one of my Pokemon. Luckily though, Metagross stays asleep, allowing Basic Insect to end the battle with a second Night Slash. That's 2 down, 2 more to go. That fight wasn't super scary, other than that one very lucky switch into Jinzo, but we still pulled through with no casualties. Third for this Elite Four is Marshall, who challenges us to another double battle. Thankfully, I'm pretty confident that I can use the same plan I used against Caitlyn, using Jinzo as bait. So Marshall starts with Infernape and Hitmontop, and I start with Kuribo and Jinzo. I immediately protect with Jinzo, which protects him from the Infernape's Heat Wave. Kuribo is then able to get off the Surf, but very nearly KOs the Flaming Monkey and gets good damage into the Hitmontop. Hitmontop just goes for a Rock Slide that doesn't do too much to Kuribo. I'm then set up for a double KO, as a Shadow Sneak KOs the Infernape and a Psyshock takes down Hitmontop. Next to Marshall is Conkeldurr and Lucario. I immediately protect Jinzo again, while Kuribo gets off a Psyshock that surprisingly doesn't get the KO into Conkeldurr. I kinda thought Conkeldurr had really bad special defense, but apparently not. Scarily, this means Kuribo has to take a Rock Slide from Lucario, and then it looks like a second Rock Slide from Conkeldurr will do enough to take down my Starfish, and Rock Slide misses. Never punished. With Kuribo so low, I decide to switch out into Mystic Man while I switch Jinzo out for Monarchy. On the Switch, Conkeldurr goes for a Match Punch into Mystic Man that doesn't do too much, and then a Rock Slide from Lucario hits both my Pokemon, but once again doesn't do too much. I assume that Mystic Man now baits a Bullet Punch from Lucario, so I decide to stay in and go through a Protect. Surprisingly, Lucario actually goes for a Close Combat instead into Monarchy, which does less than half. Monarchy then hits back with a Zen Headbutt that very nearly one-shots the Lucario. Conkeldurr just goes for a Poison Jab into Mystic Man's Protect. On the following turn, Lucario then actually goes for a Bullet Punch that very nearly KOs Mystic Man, but luckily he survives, meaning I'm able to get a double KO as Bullet Punch takes down Conkeldurr and then Moonblast takes down Lucario. Last the Marshall is Toxicroak and Breloom. I decide to protect with Mystic Man, which means after Monarchy takes an Icy Wind from Toxicroak, he's able to 3-ly KO with a Zen Headbutt. Now, I very nearly won this fight, I just have to make sure all of my Pokemon can survive one more turn, which is actually slightly awkward. Mystic Man will bait an attack here from Breloom, and there's a really high chance it's Rock Tomb. The problem with Rock Tomb is that my switches of Red Eyes, Basic Insect, and Jinzo all can't really take that hit, like at all, but I have to take that risk here or Mystic Man will just go down. So I decide to risk Red Eyes, who is kind of the least useful out of these 3 Pokemon for the upcoming fights and has the highest chance of surviving. So I switch and hold my breath as Breloom goes for a Rock Tomb, and Red Eyes survives on 8 HP. Holy that was too close. Monarchy is then able to win us the match with a Zen Headbutt. That was way too close, but we once again made it through with no deaths, meaning we've only got one more member of this Elite Four to deal with, and that means it's time for Chantel, who we have to defeat in a triple battle. This fight is super scary as triple battles can be really unpredictable. Luckily, I've got my full team alive for this, so let's go finish this Elite Four. Chantel starts with Sableye, Gengar, and Miss Magius, while I start with Red Eyes, Mystic Man, and Basic Insect. Mystic Man immediately puts the Sableye to sleep with a priority sleep powder before it starts crippling my team. Basic Insect is then able to take out the Gengar with a single Night Slash. Miss Magius just goes through a nasty plot before taking a flamethrower from Red Eyes that does 50%. Then Chandelure comes out, and I need this thing gone as quickly as possible as it has Shadow Tag, which means I can't switch while it's alive. I decide to protect with Mystic Man, who is probably baiting 2 Fire attacks this turn. The Basic Insect then KOs the Chandelure with a single Night Slash before Mystic Fire from Miss Magius goes into Mystic Man's Protect. So much Mystic. Annoyingly, I went through a Scorching Sand instead of Flamethrower with Red Eyes as I wanted to guarantee the KO on Chandelure. This means Miss Magius is able to survive on less than a quarter of his HP. Then Golurk comes out, who threatens Red Eyes. I don't really want Red Eyes to take a high horsepower here, so I decide to go for a Protect. Sableye then wakes up and goes for a Trick, but surprisingly, it goes into Mystic Man instead of Basic Insect. That's pretty perfect, honestly. Basic Insect is then able to one-shot the Golurk with a critical hit Night Slash. Basic Insect is a beast. Mystic Man is then able to outspeed and finish off the Miss Magius with a Moonblast. Last for Chantel is Jellicent. Sableye immediately gets off a priority Will-O-Wisp that could be annoying, but for some reason it goes into Mystic Man instead of Insect. Are you okay, Chantel? Maybe she's drunk. Annoyingly, Mystic Man then misses a Sleep Powder, but it actually doesn't matter as a Night Slash and then Dragon Breath are enough for the KO. That just leaves the annoying Sableye all by himself, who is easily able to be taken down after an Icicle Crash and Moonblast. That's the Elite Four taken down with no casualties. Honestly, we did have some moments of really good luck throughout those fights, but even with that, those fights actually weren't as bad as they could have been. With the Elite Four taken down, that means we've got one last challenge to face before we can say we've won: Iris and her Dragon types. And I'll be honest, Jinzo should make this fight really easy, as only 3 of Iris's Pokemon can actually damage him. Can't get cocky at the end here though, it's all come down to this. An entire month of playing, 13 attempts, uncountable deaths. Do we have what it takes to beat Blaze Black 2? Let's find out. Iris starts with Cyperia, and I start with Jinzo. I know the AI will immediately switch here into either Latios, Togekiss, or Dragonite, and I know that Kuribo should be able to take any of these 3 monsters down, so I immediately switch him in as Iris sends in Dragonite. I immediately outspeed and go through a strong Ice Beam that only doesn't KO thanks to Multiscale. Kuribo then has to take a Dragon Claw that luckily doesn't crit. A second Ice Beam is then enough for the KO. Iris then sends in her big snake again, so I switch into Jinzo. With Jinzo back out, I know Iris will switch again, and this time I decide on Basic Insect. Annoyingly though, Iris sends out Togekiss, who will probably survive an attack here and then KO, so I decide to switch into Monarchy on a strong Aura Sphere. Togekiss then gets off a Thunder Wave, meaning Monarchy is paralysed for a turn. Monarchy then has to take a second Aura Sphere before being KO'd by a Meteor Mash. Next, Iris sends out a Latios, which is slightly annoying. Iris sending out her Pokemon that can actually hit Jinzo means I'm probably going to need a sacrifice here, and I decide on Red Eyes. So I switch into Red Eyes, who takes a Mystical Fire on the switch. Then on the next turn, Red Eyes is outsped and KO'd by a Dragon Pulse. Rest in peace, my overly large dragon. You were with me from the start of this run, and you carried me through so many fights. I'll never forget you. With Red Eyes down, I'm able to send in Basic Insect, who's able to KO Iris's legendary dragon with a single fake out and then an Icicle Crash. With that, it's all over, as Jinzo is able to take out Alakazam, Superior, and Empoleon, who are all helpless against my little buggy boy. That's it, we've done it, we've defeated Pokemon Blaze Black 2, and what a journey this has been. I hope you've all enjoyed my adventures through Blaze Black 2. Honestly, despite all the struggles I've had with this game, and the crazy amount of time and effort that's gone into these last 2 videos, I've really enjoyed every second of it. I'd also like to say a big thank you to everyone that watches and supports my videos. The feedback has been crazy and I can never express how thankful I am. As always, remember to leave a like and subscribe for more content in the future, and with that, I'll see you all next time.